Hello, everybody. Thank you for those who are joining on Facebook and on LinkedIn. My name is Joe Russo, and I am the CEO of the Palm Beach Tech Association. Really happy and excited to bring you another South Florida Tech Talk. With that, I'm going to give a brief introduction of our guests here today and what we're going to be talking about. So if I could actually, of course, the share screen is always an interesting thing to share. So with that, here we go. Our mission here at Palm Beach Tech is to build South Florida into a tech hub. These tech talks we've done in person. It's a really big way of interacting with our community to do that. We are a nonprofit organization. We have over 170 members representing over 8,000 technology jobs in our region. And with that, we have some really great members, some of whom you see there. And with that, we also have a community creed that says we are wholeheartedly committed to building a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for all. We really love to welcome people into this and be a part of it. If there's questions for today, please go online, type in your questions. We'd be happy to respond to all of them and make sure Rick has everything there for our conversation. And with that, I would love to welcome our guest for tonight. His name is Rick Cavieres. He's the president of Oz Digital Consulting, headquartered in the Fort Lauderdale area. And he is going to be talking about safely bringing back mass gatherings through a product that they're working on called Salus. So I'm going to introduce Rick, but he's going to start today by actually playing a video. So Rick, I would love for you to take it from here and show us a little bit about what you have going on.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Let me just enable my camera. Thank you so much, Joe, for inviting myself and Oz to present today. Can you hear me okay, Joe?
You're coming in loud and clear.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you and South Florida Tech for the opportunity to present today. Hopefully everyone enjoyed and was able to see that short overview video of Salus. I'm going to walk through the solution, give it a bit of background of where it's coming from and what's the need for Salus. But in a nutshell, Salus aims to safely bring back mass gathering entertainment, sports and education in the COVID-19 moment that we're living in. So a quick background on Oz before we drop into Salus. As Joe mentioned, we're headquartered out of Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, and we have offices both in Asia and South America. Been around 20 plus years, but we like to think of ourselves as a 23-year-old startup because at Oz, what we really focus on passionately is digital innovation. Driving that through the customer experience, we develop both products and offer consulting services. Scale-wise, we're about 300 plus, so we have scale, but still of a boutique and nimble size. And then our core services that we offer, you can see along the bottom here, 6 core areas. Design thinking, that's everything from strategy and ideation through to custom app development, software, and so forth. Analytics and AI, automation, both RPA and intelligent automation, IoT, cloud services to underpin this, and very importantly, and where you're going to see Salus has come from, is Oz Innovations Labs. Okay, so a little background on why Salus. What need is it meeting in the marketplace? Somewhat obvious in some ways, but some data points are good to understand. So now we're kind of in phase 2, phase 3, getting back into the community. You know, if you look at opinion polling, only in the region of 17 to 25% of people are saying that they'll go to a game, whether that's a sports league game, a college game, to live concerts, to theme parks, to events, really anywhere with mass gathering, that's inside or outside. And I mean, indeed, even if you look at restaurants today, only about 50 people feel secure in that ahead of a vaccine, which we of course all hope is coming at the end of this year, early January, but as we know, no guarantee. The question, of course, wasn't asked if a platform like Salus was in place, would that make a difference? And we think it will, and we'll go into the solution in a second. Now, if we look at some of the medical evidence, and it's quite important to how we shape the Salus solution and how it works. We now understand 40 to 50% of people with the coronavirus are asymptomatic, yet they're still contagious. So that obviously is a big challenge using passive measures like thermometer temperatures, thermal cameras, and so forth to spot people that could be infected. In addition, we know that on average, people take about 5 to 5.5 days to show symptoms. However, the day to 1 to 2 days before people that will be symptomatic, so they're now pre-symptomatic, that's the other 50%, they're actually the most contagious before they show symptoms. So they're still highly contagious when they are symptomatic, but that day or two is they're highly contagious. They won't be coughing or sneezing or necessarily showing a temperature. Now, conversely, and importantly for Salus, the first 3 to 3.5 days after getting infected, people aren't contagious. So suddenly a very steep cliff happens between not being contagious, the body spots the virus, goes all out against it, and that's when people become highly contagious before they actually show symptoms. So just bear that in mind. That's going to be a key element behind Salus and how we can safely bring back mass gathering, entertainment, sports and education. Now just
Your audio has gone a little haywire on us here.
Any better? Let me just switch over my.
Sounds perfect now.
Is that better, Joe?
That's perfect.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. So let's look at just a real quick study on how contagious this is, right? And we sort of mentioned, right, we have the problem of 50% asymptomatic people also being pre-symptomatic, being highly contagious. And this is a fairly famous, or maybe we could say infamous example now from China, from a city called Guangzhou. A person actually that came over from Wuhan early on in the epidemic over there, or the pandemic as it would become, went to a restaurant, and they are A1 on this seating chart. They had lunch there, and in 54 minutes, they managed to infect 9 other people in the restaurant. And a lot of those people were more than 6 feet apart. So social distancing is important, but given that this is airborne and an aerosol, there's other things that can spread it, even if we're more than 6 feet away. In this case, you can see there's air conditioning on the far right was moving air left and right. And that's how these people left and right of the table, not in front, were infected very quickly. So this is really gives us a feel for why the coronavirus has been such a challenge and so contagious, and has required some of the extraordinary measures that we've seen. And of course, now you think 70,000 people in a stadium, what would happen? So we really need measures in place to help counteract that. Now, on the testing side, there's pretty good news. When we first came into the pandemic, we know that our testing was behind the 8 ball. The initial CDC test failed. It took a while for us to get testing up to any scale. Then often very difficult to get, expensive, often took 4 to 5 days to get a test back. Today, thankfully, that's changed markedly. Uh, Today, you can get rapid tests that come back with results in several minutes. There's various different tests from antibody to PCR tests, and there's well over 100 companies working on these tests. So in the next month or two, we'll see a lot of innovation in the types of tests. Right now, some of the price of these tests are $10 to $15. They'll come down, and expect to see tests like a breathalyzer type test where you can just blow into a bag and a digital indicator will indicate COVID-19 positive or negative. So another important thing as we envisage Salus, we really looked to where the puck was going rather than where it was at, because we started this about 10 weeks ago. So just sort of bear in mind how we designed out the platform. Okay, so let's jump into Salus and really understand the solution itself. At the heart of Salus is a mobile application that really coordinates new processes with various different actors. But the core of Salus and its single objective is to create COVID-free venue biospheres. And we'll talk about how we go about doing that. And biosphere, we really call any area, whether it's indoors or outdoors, that we can successfully coordinate the people that are coming in. And only those people coming in will have had a test and be COVID-19 negative. So the first step in Salus is, say I want to attend the Heat game on Saturday, I would go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, download the Salus Access app. Then I'd put in my user ID and password, and I'll take a selfie. I'll come back to why the selfie is important a little later. There's also an enterprise or organization access version whereby you can control who has the app and you can control what data they need to input. So for various sports organizations we're talking to, they might want it for their players and their employees. They want to know who's got the app, control what data is within the app, and maybe have a workflow. If someone does test positive, it notifies a physician or management and so forth. So those are the two versions of Salus Access. Those are the only slight ways that they work differently. Now, I want to go to the Heat game on a Saturday. I'm a fan, and I simply put that into the app, and it directs me to various test sites. Now, these test sites we work with our various clients and customers to set up. These are approved COVID-19 test sites, either in a clinical setting or something will be sent to a lab and a result will come back in 24 hours, or it'll be mobile testing. It could be at a hotel, an airport, or at the actual venue. So there's a fair bit of flexibility to ensure that we can test, to begin with, players and employees as they come back to entertainment and sports, and similarly in colleges, students and faculty members, but in the future extend this to fans. So now I've said I want to go and have my sailors test. In this case, I'm going to go to downtown Miami, straight to the AAA arena. I know there's a mobile site set up there about 3 hours, 4 hours before the game. I go up, I hold up my Sailors app, and in there is a digital key with my selfie that I took. Now, the tester is going to open something called Sailors Test. It's a separate app whereby it's controlled only to the approved testers, as we mentioned, set up in the configuration. They simply hold up the phone, scan in my details, so now they pulled across my likeness and the digital key. They can look at me and confirm it is me that's doing the test and not having someone else do it for me. In this case, they'll conduct a rapid test and get the results there on the spot. You could also have the FedEx overnight to come back within 24 hours. Time is of the essence, though, because if the test is positive in step 3, you won't get a QR code, you'll get a red screen that tells you, unfortunately, you tested positive, and to self-isolate. Now, that's hopefully the exception, but we know as we're facing a second spike here, particularly in South Florida, that percentage is going to creep up bit by bit. But right now, the vast majority of people will get the digital QR code that says, great, you tested negative. You can now access the AAA arena. So that's what you see in step 3. And that QR code is unhackable. It's got the strongest protocols around encryption. It's associated with the phone and the picture. So you can't send it to someone and then they just use a screenshot. You can't manipulate the picture at that point. That's all encrypted. So now at step 3, I go to the actual AAA arena and go in. They scan my Ticketmaster ticket. At this point, the person on the door, the security, will use what the third app in the Sailors suite, which is Sailors Monitor, and they simply scan the code, verify it's a real code and it's acceptable, and look at the picture again. So again, you can't hand off your phone to someone else. Now, everyone going within the AAA arena, in this case, the venue, should be COVID-19 free. And now we're in a biosphere of like people. Now, like anything, nothing's 100%. The tests themselves aren't 100%. They're pretty close to, depending on the test. And 2 things could go wrong on the test potentially. One, the test is administered inaccurately. They don't perform the test properly. That could give a false reading. The second one, and less problematic, is someone with a very low amount of COVID might not have enough amplification in their blood or their saliva for the test to pick it up as COVID positive. So they could have it and still get the QR code, but in that instance, they're actually unlikely to be contagious. But think of this really as risk mitigation, right? We're putting in a process where we really should, get very few, if any, people now with COVID-19. And to put it in context, right now, there's about 0.5% to 1% of people at any given time with the coronavirus in South Florida. You have a AAA arena, it's about 20,000 people. If you don't test, you're guaranteed for 200 people to go in with the coronavirus. If they reduce the capacity and try and instill social distancing, you still say it's 1/5 of that, they reduce the capacity, you still have 40 or 50 people. And as we see, especially when people are shouting, cheering, and so forth, the virus can move quicker across the air. So, we think that this is something that's sensible, right, to try and drive safety and for people to be able to enjoy the game, right, enjoy the event that they went to, and knowing that all the precautions have been taken. Now, something very important with the QR code, we talked about at the beginning, the medical science, that it takes about 3 to 3.5 days from catching the virus to being contagious. That's how long the code lasts. So if you unfortunately got the virus, say 1 minute after getting the code, you still would only be good for the time that you wouldn't be contagious. After 3 to 3.5 days, the QR code expires and you have to get retested. There's a couple of provisions to that. If having the antibodies for COVID-19, i.e. haven't had it before, confers immunity, there'll be a second type of access pass that will be applicable for the 6 or 12 months that medical science says the immunity is valid for. And the third scenario will be when there's a vaccine, and hopefully that's soon. Say it comes in January, to vaccinate 300 plus million Americans will probably take about 1 million a day. So it would still take a year. So once you have your test or your vaccine, you'd get a permanent QR code. And there'll also be a gray area where some people choose not to have the vaccine and so still are at risk. And that will be up to organizations as to what their policy is as we move through these different stages. So those are the four core steps. There's a fifth also module to Salus, which is integrated thermal cameras. We have a partnership with Motorola to integrate their cameras and technology, so you can proactively scan the audience and the fans and see if someone's exhibiting high temperature and signs of possible COVID-19. Also, we have integration into digital thermometers through the APIs. So these really, if you think about it, are a fail-safe in that example of if someone possibly got in and somehow got through these protocols. More likely, especially as we get into winter again, it's going to be someone with the flu, the cold, or pneumonia. But just the fact that they're coughing and sneezing probably would freak us out, right? We wouldn't know if they have a cold or if they potentially could have COVID. So that's the end-to-end solution. As I say you're going to games 2 weeks apart, you would get a new QR code each time. And the idea is if more and more organizations and businesses adopt Salus, you could use the Salus pass at more than one just venue. So for instance, if the restaurants and bars in downtown Miami adopted Salus now, you can watch the game, you can go safely to them. You could extend it to church on the Sunday, right? You could have a whole 3-day weekend thing that was covered. And, it's applicable to all sports and entertainment, any mass gathering inside or out, and as well with higher education and schools. So we're having conversations right across the board. We're actively talking with sports organizations, venues, event promoters, resorts, universities, because this is really a universal need across all of those. And the final thing I'd probably add is, we got ahead of the curve on working on this. We secured the patent pending first to make sure we could try and protect the IP. We developed the platform. The MVP came out on Friday, so it's ready to go to market. We've been having active conversations with prospects for the last couple of weeks and had a very significant interest. So we're probably a week or two, hopefully, away from early adopters. And then there's some enhancements that we have planned down the line. So I will pause there. Hopefully that gives you a view of Salus, how it can help in the times we have, and hopefully bring us all back to mass entertainment, sports, and education. Joe, back to you.
Thank you very much, Rick, for sharing this. And I'll have a few questions here right off the bat, and invite anyone who's watching on Facebook to throw a few questions out as well. I know there's a couple there to start off with. But to start, what are you thinking about with the potential of white labeling this as well to a few either major venue organizations or let's say, American Airlines Arena, having it be the American Airlines Arena, something like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Joe. So early on, as we were architecting and designing this, we foresaw that various organizations, whether they be major leagues or arenas or other types of organizations, might want to either white label or integrate with the apps they already have, right? An obvious one is the likes of Ticketmaster and StubHub, right? They've already got an app. So can you combine? And the various organizations often have their own. So it's architected, Joe, to your question, so it can be dropped fairly easily into other apps. And as we began this, we actually originally thought the cruise lines would be the most important uh, customer for this, and we were working with one of the major cruise lines, so we saw this impact pretty quickly. And we work and develop their onboard apps, hence our deep experience in developing these. And so we built it exactly to your question, so it could drop in to their current apps. So their guests, right, aren't having to open 2 or 3 apps.
We have another question actually coming in from Josh McJilton from the CIO from Pharmacy Development Services. And he was asking about how are you recruiting or identifying testing sites?
Yeah, another good question, right? And something that's evolving over time. So, we're fortunate to have very good medical advisors for sailors. As you can imagine, it's critical to get the right testing strategy and protocols in place. So, our chief medical officer is a foremost authority, both for the state and the country in this space. So what we do is first work with the organization to understand which tests they find applicable. Right? There's many different tests. There's antibody tests, there's PCR tests, there's different types of swab tests. So it's first understanding which their medical advisors, right, talking with our medical advisors, finds applicable. Then it's defining the actual test centers that can administer those tests, and in some cases creating new mobile test centers or just new partnerships to execute against it. So that's part of the we could call it the configuration set up for Salus from an enterprise organization level to find that out. Now, hopefully, as it becomes more ubiquitous, right, we'll start to knit together those various testing sites, as a network. And then if we have multiple clients, right, we can say these meet their standards, right, and do relationships to that. But that's how we're approaching that, Joe.
Josh had a little bit of a follow-up there, said he was thinking about their network of over 1,000 pharmacies around the country looking to support testing in their communities. So maybe you want to check out connecting with Josh aside from them. Maybe just put a little plug in there for himself.
Happy to, yeah. We're looking for partners.
I'll connect you guys offline in that case. Rick, I'd ask you kind of a personal question, just kind of to understand your perspective. What is your sport of choice? If you're going to go watch a sporting event, which one would you go do?
Yeah, so probably my English accent portrays me here, or portrays me, soccer's my passion. So it would be watching, MLS, or if I was back in Europe, the English Premier League in England. But outside of that, definitely the NBA basketball. I used to live in downtown Miami, just across from the American Airlines Arena. So was able to take in some games when Shaq was in town and Wade was at his peak, and then when LeBron was there. So hopefully we'll rebuild the team and make it glorious again. But those are my 2 favorite sports.
And just to provide a little bit of context, if you're going to maybe a Manchester United game in England, how many people are in the stands for those?
Yeah, well, I'm a Liverpool fan, so hopefully
Okay.
no one for Manchester United. But that aside, Manchester United is the biggest, has Old Trafford's the biggest stadium in England in football and soccer there. So that's about 73,500 people. So pretty big, right? So that's why you need testing options ahead of the game, as well as mobile, quick testing, rapid testing the day of the game, right? To make sure you can accommodate the number of fans. And that's why it was important for us to understand that testing the technology was going to evolve over time. Because if this was 2 months ago, Salus wouldn't be viable, right? We didn't have enough tests. They weren't quick enough to turn around the results. But again, we knew in America, we're a great country when it comes to innovation and development, and we quickly have made strides.
And with that, we have one last question. This is from Richard Polly, formerly a vice president of e-commerce over at Office Depot, but formerly. So he's out there in the world consulting right now. And he asked, will you be able to provide integration with testing centers so that their results don't have to be manually entered?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I probably should have walked through the Salus test app side in a bit more detail. Literally, all the person when I go to test, I just hold up my phone like this. The tester holds up their phone. That's it. It comes straight across to me. Now, if it's an instant test, when they get the result back after 2 to 4 minutes, all they do is press a button, yes or no, negative, positive, right? So sorry, positive or negative. That's all they do on their phone. So that's pretty simple when you think about it, and that result comes immediately back to my app. If that say it's a swab test that's going to a lab, they just scan the QR code. It's immediately associated on the actual swab, and then it comes back in an automated fashion. So to us, that was the most elegant solution, the simplest, because there's a lot of different tests out there, different protocols, different test centers, different systems. So you'd really be trying to hit a moving target there. And we didn't want to take people's word for it, because otherwise most people are going to say, sure, I'm negative and took a test. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's more simplified than actual integrate into a system. And because there's be so many. And if you think of it, if we set up a mobile tent with 100 testers outside the AAA, they don't need a big system, right? They're just putting the results straight into the Salus app.
Very good. So with that, we're just about at time. But where can somebody to go to learn more about Oz, and where can somebody to learn about Salus?
Yeah, thank you for that. So our website is followoz.com. Couldn't get oz.com. That was taken a while ago. Just put follow in front of Oz, so followoz.com. And you'll see right on the front page, clicks into Salus, there's a whole solution page. And anyone's free to reach out to me. Hopefully they have my details from this meeting, but they'll find them on the web page or on my LinkedIn. So it should be super easy, hopefully.
Of course, and this is patent pending as well. So hopefully in a few months everything comes back, and you'll have the patent on the product, and it'll be out there working. So hopefully, once it's been put to some good use, we can hear how the whole project went and have a good success story out of it. But with that, Rick, thank you so much for giving us the presentation and joining us here on the Tech Talk today. Hopefully everything continues to go well with Oz and on this project. And if there's anything more that we can do or share about, would love to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Joe. Very much appreciate the opportunity to spread the message and inform on Salus and the best wishes. And hopefully, yeah, in a couple of months we can do a follow up. And of course, thank you to everyone that is spent the time viewing this, feel free to reach out to myself or anyone at ours.
Thank you all. And thanks for everybody who's watching tonight. Everyone have a good rest of your day. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.